So yeah, last week we talked about my my feeling of stress, and you call it PTSD while eating,
Yes.
um, and and the strong tendency for like restlessness and like kind of dullness even when eating and spacing out, and in turn then don't really yeah ending up in a restless state and not enjoying the food. So yes, and I've been doing that, and it's been pretty interesting. it's
You've
it's
been
kind of
doing what?
huh?
So you just described the way that you would normally do it, but now that we've had some talks about it, what is your new style?
Yeah, yeah. My new style is like really chewing the food thoroughly until it's like liquid, and if I take a bite, then I put down my hands. And I really saw like how not putting down my hands and still having a fork or something in my hand, it's automatic to like put together the next bite while while chewing the first. Um,
This is the force of habit. The
yeah,
habit's doing that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it's really good to interrupt that habit by putting your hands down and not picking up your fork or knife or spoon until you finish chewing.
yeah.
That's hard. I know. I've
It's
done that practice.
it feels like training a little puppy. Like it's 1 second you don't like look at it, and it's just back to the old ways. And it yeah, I mean you could describe it as hard, but it's also really funny, so I'm just trying to have fun with it.
Yes, that's the only way to.
You were too
Let us say
strong
go
for
into a state of denial, which means that we just lose track of it because it's too painful to deal with over and over and over again. But by making it fun, making it a game, making it,
yeah.
aha, I can see that stuff over and over again, then we'll have the right attitude. We can actually finish that problem. We can get
Mhm.
rid of it.
And it's also like it's actually it's pretty great that I have this habit when eating, because I can really like I have a method of introducing restlessness, and I can watch it. So I always know when I'm eating there's restlessness. So I think that can be even seen as a great chance, right, to work with restlessness.
All right. So, have you been seeing restlessness come up in other places and other times other than just food?
Yes, it comes also up when I'm like when I'm going to work, driving my bicycle, or back from work, or if I go in for lunch uh, when I'm working. So it's always then this feeling of having to hurry up, and it feels the same like this sensation when I'm eating, and it also feels like being pushed around or being driven by something. And yeah, that's also something I've been watching. Yeah, yeah. This restlessness always like there's a really distinct quality in my belly, and if I can relax this a little bit, then it's possible to be with it.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
I notice you use the word driver almost as if you're driven. Now,
Hmm.
in TA, which is it's actually an offshoot of Freud,
Hmm.
and that we've talked about games. The games people play is the name of the book, and we've talked about games a little bit. But Eric Byrne talks about the transactional analysis, to where we begin to look a little bit deeper. Freud used id, superego, and ego, and nobody really understood it. But Byrne used the word parent, adult, child, and that we can see that this parent is really all of the learned behavior which gives us our society. That's what the Buddha calls Sila Bhatta Paramasa. Leaving this other stuff in there, um, the adult, which means the thinking part of the mind, which we're trying to wake up and get going, and then the child, which would be the more instinctual ways of doing it. So in that regard, Byrne it's a different map, but it shows exactly what's going on the same way that the way that the Buddha does. Now, Taby Kaler was one of the most famous of the students who wrote some books about it, and he came up with a concept called drivers. And he came up with 5 of these drivers. But the very big one, the one that we're talking about here, is what he called the hurry up driver, because he had this thing about the restlessness nailed. So the psychologists can see this, and I could see it in myself when I was studying psychology. I knew that that driver was there, but it was only after I got to Wat Suan Mok, with years of meditation, did I actually figure out, with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's help, how to deal with it. By noticing it, inspecting it, breathing into it, and with the things that bring it up, like you've mentioned now too, which is the primary two. One is travel, and the other one is eating food. These are the 2 times when restlessness is most likely to occur, let us say, kind of in its purest form.
Yeah.
Now, another kind of form which would not be so pure would be that you've got an assignment or a test to take, or a wedding to go to like your own, or getting visas ready. So that every time the thought of that visa comes up, or every time you even see a wedding dress, and here comes that anxiety coming close after it, all right?
Yeah.
These we need to start identifying with, but you're also looking at it in its really most direct form, which happens like every time we go travel. There it is. Be on guard. This is dangerous. And that's run out of the instinct. What we need to do is take that job away from the instinct and say, okay, we're just simply going to watch what's going on, and we're going to do it cool. We don't have to have this restless edge on things. And the other one is the food eating. So you've got those 2 identified. Start to watch out for other things, because once we build up a habit of having a particular kind of feeling, and you and I have worked on this issue of restlessness for quite a while, and I guess you would agree with me that it's like the number 1 driver. That's what drives your life.
Yeah, it's just the one thing that like just makes you lose your chill, right?
Right, exactly. Why? Because in fact it puts you on the boil. Precisely.
Yeah.
All right, so we need to start watching when that stuff comes up so that we can deal with it. You're getting the food part of it properly, and you're dealing with that. Congratulations, and continue on, because you know that you're not finished with it yet, but at least you've gotten started with it.
Yeah.
And that you have a new job to do. Every time that you have food to eat, your job is to make sure that you're mindful enough that you're going to go through this procedure so that you can enjoy the food without having this deep sense of anxiety come up.
Yeah.
And so if it does, you want to stop everything, especially not playing with any of the food, and just close your eyes and just concentrate on the chewing of the mouth to let that feeling of restlessness. Some people call it a knot, like it's a knot in the stomach or whatever. Okay. Another one would be like we feel like we're on the spot. Being challenged.
Yeah. Like having to prove something, right?
Having to prove something, right? For a young musician going out and performing, especially the first couple of years or the first 4 or 5 years after they do a lot of performance, it becomes okay or easy enough.
Yeah, or like in sports when you have a big game coming up.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Those would be all what we would call secondary, but they're just as strong and just as powerful. And that part of what your job will be is to figure out it's going to be a short list, and the list is going to change from time to time, but you need to have a list of 4 or 5 items or things that are worthy of avoiding.
Hmm.
Okay, for me here in Thailand, one of the issues to avoid is visas. Don't talk
Hmm.
about visas. Don't think about immigration.
Yeah.
Keep it out of the mind. Okay, so that would be one thing. But for you, it would be other things like if someone's got a project that's a month off, then the best thing to do is to not be in a state of anxiety about that project, but to get ready for that project.
Hmm.
And as we're getting ready for it, we know that we're getting ready for it. We can congratulate ourselves for it, knowing that everything is going to be a good uh, process, because the only other option is to be miserable for that month.
Yeah.
And so staying out of that anxiety, that's the way to go. So this is kind of new information for you to recognize, because you've talked about the big two, and that is out traveling on your bicycle or whatever, and the other one is eating food. What's another kind of place where you're most likely to go into a state of anxiety
Um,
or feel restlessness?
yeah, it's when I like get a task with a close deadline at work, or like when you said like when a musician has to perform. I played basketball for a few years when I was younger, like pretty active, and that's also the feeling I had like before every game on in the first like 2 minutes or something before the game really starts. So yeah, it's in places where I have to like where I feel like perform at for sure. Um, yeah, and I, I I can also I also saw like the last week how conceit plays a big role in this all, right? Because if I can relax if I can see the feeling of like non-liking, then I can
Hmm.
also often see the restlessness, and if I see the restlessness clearly, then I can also like see the conceit, which gives rise to the restlessness.
Yes. Um, One of the ways that it happens with this concept of the secondary kind of anxiety is because of stories that we tell ourselves.
Mm.
And in fact, you could go so far as to say that every time that you recognize that you've, say, got a project in a few days or a month or whatever, every time we think of that project, that's the time that anxiety is most likely to show up. So it's unlikely to show up than when we're not thinking about that or the other few things that will put us into a state of anxiety. So this is part of what we begin to do with these hindrances is we identify a few areas and we're saying we're going to stay away from that,
Yeah,
because if I go into that area mentally, it's going to bring stuff up.
yeah,
All right. And
yeah,
so these are the stories that we tell ourselves.
yeah, that's also been an area which I had like made huge improvements the last few months, because before I was really often worrying about things while I was doing them, and now I'm much more able to like make a plan and then just do it and don't think about it anymore. Um, and yeah, so that's been going pretty good, and I can really see that. Last time, what I just thought about, last time you said that we talked about how like feelings give rise to thoughts, and now you said like that we wanna like don't think about particular stuff that we are prone to worry about then later. So
Mm-hmm.
is it's a two-way like connection, right?
Yes, it's a two-way connection. First off, the mind is a conditioner for feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and the feelings are conditioners for the mind. It's really valuable to see that connection of how the feelings condition the mind, and it happens that way. Let us say, with this anxiety will come the feeling that I don't like it, and that what the mind normally will do will say, "Okay, I've got a feeling that something needs to be done, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. Let me start thinking about the things that need to be done." Okay, that's an example of where the feelings are conditioning the mind. A stronger case of that is when people get angry, they're not able to think, because getting angry means that all the blood and all the juices and all of that are getting ready for flight or fight, combat, and there are no there's no oxygen going to the brain.
Yeah.
And so this is another example of where emotions or feelings condition the mind. But we also know that the mind conditions the feelings in the sense of, oh, for example, comforting, that we can comfort ourselves. And we know the kinds of things, or an adult will comfort a child. So we can see that just sweet talk will settle a child down. That's proof enough that the mind control or uh, conditions of feelings. So they go around and around each other. But it's also a little bit more complicated than that, because we have these underlying tendencies, these high fetters, like this deep restlessness that goes in and throws things up anyway. So we've got this third conditioner in there.
Mm-hmm.
So the restlessness will condition the feelings condition the mind, and then off we go.
Yeah.
Unless we watch, unless we can see what that stuff is, unless if we can see these feelings early.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that some students will talk about is they say that, oh, when the feelings are this big, I can handle them. But when things get really big, then I feel overwhelmed or swamped, or there's an avalanche or whatever. Well, the reality is that whatever got so big got big. It didn't just go zoom like that instantly. It took a few seconds for it to build up.
Yeah.
The question is, with our mindfulness, how soon can we see
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
before it builds up to the point that we feel overwhelmed by it? I think you're kind of beyond that now. You can see things pretty quickly now. You're beginning to.
Yeah, most of the time, I mean, I still, I still get like hit in the face sometimes, and then I get reminded why I do all this. So, but yeah, I can really relate to that.
Yes, well, that's what the dedication to the path then becomes.
Yeah,
Is when we recognize, oh, when I'm not mindful, this old crap is going to go back into gear again, and then I'm going to wind up, being a worrywart or worse. And so we become dedicated then to being on guard. to be watchful, to note, to start watching. Well, eventually what happens is that this watching becomes quite delightful. It's fun.
Yeah.
So that anything that comes up, we can say, I got you.
Yeah.
Right back to that very, very first thing when the mind wanders away from the breath. Never mind, I got you.
Yeah.
So come back again. Well, everything winds up being that way. If we're working with feelings, if we're working with this deep stuff, it's always how much mindfulness do we have?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we catch it quick?
Yeah. Great.
The Buddha has said, I think I've told you this before, but there is actually a sutta. It's in the Anguttara Nikaya in the Wands, and that's an important point because he's talking about the mind. But in this particular sutta, is in a group of suttas to where there are direct analogies for things. That this is like that, and this is like that. And in some cases, the mind is like that. But in this one sutta, it's really special because he says, the mind, O monks, is fast. It is so fast, I do not even have an analogy for how fast it is. Okay?
Yeah.
And so that stuff, it doesn't just appear great, but by the time we see it, it looks great. Where in fact, it did have a build-up process. It started small and then it built up because there was just a bit of unmindful spinning of the mind, and it just blows up. So our job is to be there very quickly, and we begin to take the dedication. Okay, I'm going to really watch what's going on.
Yeah.
And so that dedication then helps us build that skill of sati so that we can remember to be here now over and over and over and over again until it becomes almost a habit. When I say almost a habit, it's because sati comes quick, and with it, the right effort is almost energetic. So it's almost like a hair trigger that on a mousetrap that has a spring that's spring loaded. It's not that you have to go take the thing and move it over. That's the effort. Now it's become energetic. It's on a spring trigger, and so as soon as we remember, we say, "Oh yeah, that's right." So that's the way that we begin to practice over and over again. We remember to take delight. Especially take delight in the things that in the old days we would consider wrongdoings or even things we wanted to hide from. Now we take great delight in finding those things. Now, the old way of looking at it is, will that stuff ever end? The answer is, well, I'm having too much fun watching it. I don't care whether it ends or not.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the way that we want to practice, is that we've got the dedication that's based upon the knowledge of the Four Noble Truths that, hey, this stuff is really worth avoiding.
Yeah.
Staying out of a state of anxiety is much better than being caught in it. And so this is why the Buddha's system actually works. In fact, it's not really the Buddha's system. What it really is dedication. And the dedication is there for many people in many different religions, but many times that dedication is based upon a false reality. And so it's not as pure as the dedication that's based upon actual reality, the eradication of the doubt about what is and what is not the path. Then brings that great dedication on to practice.
Yeah.
And then from time to time, after we're on the path and we wind up in the ditch, we'll say, I'm going to start watching for that. There that anxiety comes again. I'm going to get out of that ditch before I wind up in it. That's why we become quite mindful with it, with that strong determination, that strong intention. And this is what the Buddha calls the strength of one who has right view. Strength of mind, which is actually getting very, very close now to that whole quality or the concept of unification of mind, when we become a unit, a whole, when everything. And another way of saying that, in fact, I just had a conversation last month with Chandama Vitu, who is an English monk. He's been a monk for about 28 years. And he started the conversation in the sense of thinking that what he was saying would be a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
When he was saying about how small the Dhamma is. After 28 years, it finally fits into a nice, neat, tight little package for him. And I congratulated him. I said, yes, that's exactly right. And so then we began to talk about it, of how really tight, really interesting it is. That really is the only thing the Buddha's teaching is only that one thing, dukkha, dukkha nirodha. We have to pull the whole thing apart, inspect all of the details of it, and then put it right back together again as a neat package.
Mm.
Something on the order of a laptop that's got those various components in it.
Yeah.
It's got a hard drive in it. And it's got base level programming, which would be the BIOS, which is the bootstrap and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got drivers and all of this kind of stuff, peripheral stuff in the sense of cameras and microphones and keyboards and all this kind of extra stuff from the internet. And so in many ways, we are like a laptop computer. And people who use a laptop, as they use the laptop, they begin to figure out. They hear about things, and then they begin to understand. Oh, this is what's in the laptop. This is how it works. This stuff about Wi-Fi, there's just a little Wi-Fi chip there in the computer, and it's connected with through the bus, and that's all there is to it. Okay, so we begin to see that. Oh, yes, the Dhamma is like that. We also see the human mind is like that. The human mind is very much that way. So as we begin to understand all of the parts of the laptop and can put it together then as a unit whole, without a doubt. I mean, now we don't have any doubts. We understand how the laptop works. We understand how the mind works. Eventually, we apply that to the entire Dhamma. And that's when it all clicks together. Oh, yeah, that's right. This is really interesting. The whole universe is just one thing. And the division comes in the sense of I am. The I am means I'm separate. I am not part of this huge whole, that I'm separate. And so that's what causes most people their suffering, is by thinking that they are not part of the Dhamma or part of God. This is what religion should be kind of figure out, is not a God that you can talk to or sits on a throne and throws spears that look like lightning or any of that kind of stuff, but understand that, hey, we're in a sea of reality. And we can experience that sea of reality only when we're here now. And we have to be here now with the body, with the feelings, with the mind, and with all of our senses. And when we are here, we recognize, oh, we're just a part of this huge whole that is in constant turmoil, constantly in turmoil. Everything is just in turmoil. A much better word is than anicca or temporariness, but rather turmoil, because that's much more close to it. The Buddha talked about idiopapajayata as the cause-effect relationship. With this there is that, without this there is not that. Now the scientists, the physicists are beginning to understand that there's some sort of quantum or ticking of some kind of clock that they haven't figured out yet, but that it, among other things, determines the speed of light. That light itself is a cause-effect relationship that is mounted on these waves that are spinning through space, which means that if we're working with light at Armstrong units, then whatever this clock tick is, it's got to be very, very tiny. But there is something in there that keeps everything going. And so one domino after another, times 10 zillion dominoes, and that's what reality is. It's just a flood. This is, in fact, what the word stream enterer, or in fact, sotapan, means, is to be in the flood of the reality of this present moment. And it is quite a flood. And so we begin to just accept that that's how it is, but we accept it with great joy, because we recognize there is the satisfaction, there is the completeness, there are really no tasks or jobs to do other than those that I think about. And when I stop thinking about things to do, I've got nothing to do. Hence we have haiku like, no place to go and nothing to do, and the spring comes and the grass grows by itself. And so we wind up being filled with satisfaction. And so much of the Buddha's path is taking us in the way of kind of checking out of the society, recognizing the society, there is no freedom in the society. That's just a super ego, or it's the parent ego state, or it's our the Buddha actually calls it our instinctual willingness to adhere to rites, rules, rituals, do what we're told to do. And one of the most important things that we're told to do is that you've got to perform now in order to get your results later. And that winds up being one of the biggest problems with meditators. They think that if they meditate now, they're going to get benefit later, and oh no, you got to get your benefit right now. And when you do, then you're practicing correctly, and the skills will be developed. So you're moving right along. That's great. I'm glad to hear this. So let's leave it with this. Get yourself a short list of topics that are best to be avoided, so that you don't think about those kind of things. That'll help you stay in the here now. It'll also help you stay out of that anxiety.
It kind of keeps me in the stream, right?
Keeps you in the stream, exactly. Exactly so. Exactly so. Is there anything else?
I'm quite happy for now.
I know. Congratulations, you're on the path. That's excellent. I love it when I see students that are out there on the path. They've got it. Right. Yeah, no ditches this week. Excellent. All right, Ferdinand. Well, we'll see you later. We'll post this one.
All right.
And we'll YouTube, and we'll see you later.
Yeah. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.